Well, Tapincapital, episode 2. And it seems like we just put our foot in the door and we've already gotten absolutely rinsed. Nothing seemed to go our way from top to bottom. What was your reaction watching those games, Rolf? It was entertaining, but a bit painful, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know if it was as entertaining as I wish it would have been. I could tell you the things that happened, I ultimately feel like, the two Varane errors, that's not that's not why the bookies had Madrid as so far away from being favorites for winning this tournament. I mean, he's really the last guy you would have assumed in this Madrid team to be making those kinds of errors. One, let alone two. It's quite shocking. With the Leon Juve situation, that was this exact situation was the one thing were hoping we would avoid, that you know Juve just barely win the tie, but Leon still go through. It's just
This was really the worst
you
case
know
scenario because if Ronaldo has a sloppy goal to make it 3-1, then their odds immediately shoot up to where Barca's are, if not maybe even a little bit better. I think now they're at plus 800. So that's a pretty massive improvement, and we would have sold the odds. Or they win the tie, or they lose the tie rather, and we come in on that Leon bet. So, I think our logic was there, our analysis was there. And I feel the same way about the Real Madrid game. We talked before about Pep overthinking the tie and making weird changes. And when the team sheet got released, and I saw Foden playing on the wing, I saw Gundogan starting in midfield. I saw Fernandinho playing at center back. Part of me, I think Cancelo was playing as well at left back. Didn't expect all those to go through, and I saw a world playing out where one of those players makes a bad mistake, but they kind of came through unscathed. And those two Varane errors were just painful. And I don't know how this affects Madrid going forward, their transfer plans. I've seen them linked with Dybala in the press, but I don't know. It's just it's tough, but I think we need to keep going forward and get a bigger sample size, because that's how we'll ultimately prove that this is going to work.
Yeah, I'm not deterred in using the exact same framework that we applied in the first round going forward, because these are the things that you simply can't be factoring into your analysis. I mean, a player can have a mistake and that can turn a bet upside down. I don't remember a time when I witnessed a world class, or supposedly world class. I'm just kidding. Varane is world class. I don't think this changes that, but I don't remember the last time a world class defender made two shocking errors like this. So that's something you can't account for in this analysis, and these things are so far and few between that I don't even think it's worth it to really, you know, be shy about using our framework going forward. So I can't help but agree. We'll just, ultimately we're only down approximately 70 million of the starting billion, and sitting, honestly, with plenty of cash left at 930 million. So we've got a few more weeks like this before we start to question what we're doing with our lives. But we'll
This
keep it
will
moving.
this will make our victories even sweeter. So let's just go quickly over that. You already said we lost 70 mil. So specifically, all the single games we lost on. The Napoli didn't win, Lyon didn't win, and Real didn't win. And then the other one was our overall Real bet has now been evaporated, but we still have the City not to win and PSG not to win. So selling both of those odds. And I think we're going to continue to sit on both of those. And so I think before we get into our new bets, I think it's time we talk about if maybe these games have changed our feelings on any of these teams in particular. that are still left in the tournament. So I think a good place to start, actually, because this was a game to me going into it where I thought, this might be a 1-0, a 2-1, but Barcelona came out and kind of destroyed Napoli. And this is a game I watched the first, I think, 50 minutes of. And Suarez and Messi looked like they were in form and playing well. And I don't know if those two alone are going to be good enough. Longley and Piqué didn't look incredible. I didn't think Ter Stegen looked super solid. I didn't think their midfield really controlled the game. And I'll preface it with I think Napoli looked very poor as well, especially Koulibaly at the back. And I thought Insigne and Mertens had bad finishing. But at the end of the day, you go back and look at the goals, and it's great movement. It's great strength from Messi. It's great dribbling. It's a good forward run from Alba. And you think, if a player like De Jong or Rakitic can come in and get an in-form Suarez and Messi the ball on the edge of the box in a dangerous position, why couldn't they beat anyone in a single game? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is a better Barca than we initially assumed. That being said, I will say some of the uncertainty about what Bayern would ultimately look like coming off of really a month and about a week of competitive play since the final Bundesliga game, which of course wasn't truly competitive, or really the DFB Pokal was, I guess, the last game on the 4th of July, so they're about a month. So the way that Bayern crushed Chelsea, and to be perfectly clear, they were still a little bit rusty, but just rusty enough where you could see it, but I can tell it's something that's going to be gone for this Barca match day. So it's really, I think Bayern are still heavy favorites against Barca, even though I definitely think they did. Barca surprised me against Napoli with how well they did play under pressure, but I think they are going to seriously struggle, and the only way they go through is off a miracle, Messi miracle, crazy goal, and I think every single pundit, that's all they're talking about is, oh, Messi can do this, by himself, and Messi can win games by himself. And just to clarify, I think that's a massively overrated factor in this game, because I don't remember the last time Messi took an out of form Barca deep in the Champions League to just win games by himself with no help. I just that's totally unfair. Even when Ronaldo is allegedly, being the difference maker, he's getting crosses from guys like Modric or Carvajal that he could score. And the same is true of Messi. They still need somebody to support them. And the question is ultimately going to be, are Bayern just going to smother the rest of the team and prevent Messi from even getting into it? I think that's an extremely likely scenario, just given the gulf in form. Bayern are in fantastic form right now, and that's really, are they going to show up to play? Because if they show up to play, I don't think there's anything Barca can do.
I saw a hot meme online which said Lampard's biggest successes of the season: qualifying for the Champions League, reaching an FA Cup final, only losing 7-1 to Bayern on aggregate. And I think it's true, and maybe the third one is his biggest achievement. And I think we already agreed that Bayern was the favorites, and this only solidified it. And you were telling me a stat earlier about Lewandowski's involvement. What were those numbers again?
So in seven matches that he's actually played in so far on this Champions League campaign, he has 17 goals and assists. And I believe that breaks down 13 goals, 4 assists. I'm pretty sure that's what the tally is. And he was involved in all 7 of the Chelsea goals. He scored, I think, what did he score? 3 of them and assisted 4. A couple of those were world class assists. I mean, he's the best player in the world right now. I think we could say that
Yeah.
definitively. He's not even just poaching anymore. which was always my biggest criticism as a Bayern fan of Lewandowski. Was I felt like if we're not getting the ball to him in the box, he's not doing anything. Now he's dropping in. He's shifting over to the wing to be a fluid part of the front four because Flick uses a very fluid front four, and he's getting the ball on the wing. And go, rewind 2 years. If Lewandowski had the ball on the left wing, on his strong right foot with the ability to cut in, I sitting there as a fan watching the game, I would assume that nothing was going to come of it other than a back pass. Now I can assume that he's basically playmaking from that position, playing great forward, thoughtful balls into Muller or Gnabry or whoever is rotating around the front four on the break. And I think his game has really just it's to the next level. And part of that, of course, is the fact that I think Messi and Ronaldo have come down a bit from their peaks. Hot take, I guess, not really. But I think he's the best player in the world right now. We'll just leave it at that.
So yeah, and I think we'll reflect that in our next rounds of bets. But the last team I think we need to talk about, and I think we spent a bit of time talking about the Real City game specifically, but City moving forward in the competition, it looks like they're going to be going Lyon, then Bayern, and then the final. Who knows is going to come through on the other side. And in theory, you think, all right, City, they just won a big game. They won both legs against a Real Madrid team. They're going up against Lyon, so you think, all right, likely straight through to the semifinal. But we have hesitation, and I think it links back into what we talked about in our first video about, is this a team that's built for this competition? But also, they haven't been overly consistent this season. If you compare it with the Bayern, for example, look at their record since Hansi's taken over. You see,
we're on 18 wins right now in a row. Also, another key point about City before we forget to mention it, because I know this is the kind of thing we forget that's key. Yeah. Haven't they lost their last 2 Champions League fixtures against Lyon in particular?
Yeah, I remember, and Depay played a big role in those, and he's back now.
Yep.
So I think that's very interesting and makes a Lyon bet more incentivized.
Intriguing.
Yeah. And I think on that, maybe, unless there's anything else you want to add on City, perhaps we can talk about our upcoming bets.
Yeah, anybody who's looking at City and saying, oh, they've cleared Madrid, it's, they're the heavy favorites now. If you came away thinking that City won that Madrid tie instead of Madrid just completely blew it, I don't know what you watched. I mean, anybody can beat a Madrid team where Casemiro is going to play like a donkey for the full 90 minutes. There was no protection for the defense. I mean, it was absolutely shocking and dreadful from Casemiro. I thought basically everybody else in that Madrid lineup was doing okay. Courtois, did not look fantastic. Mendy did not have a fantastic game. I actually thought he played way too conservatively. That might have been Zidane's tactics. But Modric in particular, I thought, 35 years old, how much can he really do at the top stage? I thought he actually looked very solid. I thought Kroos looked reasonably good during the course of the game. Benzema looked incredibly lethal and just wasn't given enough opportunities. Hazard and Rodrigo just didn't get the chance to get in the game enough because Madrid were too defensive throughout the course of the game. But, I thought that Madrid team was set up in a way that City were able to just capitalize on the errors that were being made without utilizing their system. I don't think City used their system to win that game. And I don't look at City and think we need to revise our conclusion that City are not going to win this thing. In fact, going into this Lyon tie, to be quite honest, this is the exact kind of match at the exact kind of position in the Champions League that City and Pep squander their chances every time.
I agree. And I think When, for example, look at the Madrid goal. What did we say before the game started? Benzema's the kind of player that can, he'll step up and he'll get a good finish or he'll get a slop goal. And I think that's exactly what happened. A chance fell to him, heads it straight in. Very few keepers are going to even get a hand on that. You look at the City game and really throughout, you can argue David Silva comes on, he can make a good opportunity. Mahrez, if he starts, can make a good opportunity. De Bruyne always has something in the locker, but I didn't feel there was in the same way that we talked about Messi at Barca. I don't really feel like there was anyone in that team who, if it's 1-0 and they need a goal, you think they have magic in their boots. I do think Kyle Walker had a really good game. I thought Ederson had a good game. Um, but I also don't trust if is Fernandinho Laporte going to be the center back pairing going forward, because Fernandinho has shown that he'll fill in at center back, but he's not going to play there every game, and these games are fairly like close together. So I still have questions throughout their team. I thought
Yeah.
Foden could have played better. Um, I think Jesus and Sterling, I'm never convinced either of them is gonna come in and change the game. Uh, so I think obviously this boosts their odds because they're into arguably the most favorable tie and probably into the semifinals. But all
Yeah.
of our preceding analysis stays the same, and I think that's a good transition into our new
Well,
bets.
one more pet
One more thing, let's hit it.
point, sorry, real quick on this City game. If Barca upset Bayern and go through to the semis, I'm honestly anticipating that Barca become the favorites against City in that situation, because it probably means, like you were saying, Messi and Suarez pull world class performances out of their asses. And let's be real, Fernandinho and Laporte versus Messi, I mean, Messi would be salivating. And
Totally.
if Bayern go through, Lewandowski is going to be absolutely salivating at playing that kind of a defense. So the idea that City are heavy favorites here, I just think it's ridiculous. I get this Barca's in weird form, but if they manage to overcome Bayern, the confidence in the team is going to be absolutely sky high. And I don't, if City, even if City trounce Leon in this quarterfinal, I don't think it fundamentally changes anything about City's odds. That's the main reason I think it's still favorable for us to bet against them, as we are going to do.
Yeah, and so I guess similarly, we're you could say doubling down. We already have taken out odds against City, and now we're selling 5% more. Um,
Yeah.
and I think for all the reasons we just said, and I think you outlined it really well. Chances are they're going to go through against Lyon. However, that semifinal, I think they're going to hit an impassioned Barca or Bayern, and that's going to be
Yeah.
the end of their time.
I
Uh,
agree.
so, staying on the topic of City, this will be our second bet. Lyon to beat City at 1%, which interestingly is at plus 1,000, which I find really interesting because I personally didn't watch the Lyon Juve game. I just saw some of the highlights and the stats, but compared to the odds for the other single elimination games, this one is by far the most skewed in one direction. And you can argue that it's coming for one of the teams that had one of the least convincing performances, and a Lyon team who, they have to pie back. They were holding Juve to 1-1 until Ronaldo scored a screamer. And based on that, based on the small sample size of the last two games, you think, that I don't think this should be wildly price different than, let's say, a PSG Atalanta where there's a heavy favorite. So, like, why do you think that the bookies have come in and said this is so far towards Man City?
Because they're just overrating City. I mean, they're saying, oh, if City could see through Madrid, there's no reason they're not going to see through Lyon. And the simple fact is, well, I don't even expect Lyon to make the mistakes that Real did in their match. So, the fact is, Pep over the last 5-6 years in the Champions League has kind of been a fraud. and he has completely failed in every pursuit of this title that he's made over those years with teams that reasonably all could have won it. There's no reason he shouldn't at least have won. And instead of having won, he's honestly gone out with dreadful performances in each of these tournaments. Just errors that you're just thinking there's no reason for them to be going out right now. There's no reason they had to play this way in this semifinal or this quarterfinal against Tottenham. It's just ridiculous. So, obviously, City are heavy favorites to defeat Lyon. But to say that they're 90-10 favorites here, like the bookies have it, I think that's just ridiculous. There's a greater than 10% chance that Pep is going to screw this game up by himself.
I agree.
Let alone whatever the probability. I don't watch Lyon enough, and actually nobody has watched Lyon enough because they haven't been playing enough over the last 4 or 5 months for us to even assess what they're going to do. We don't even know what the probability is that they just pull out a masterclass performance. I mean, say what you want about Lyon not being a big club, not having a great team. All of those things are true, but this is their moment. They've never had a better chance to do something in the Champions League.
Man, you're throwing a lot of shade Lyon's way. They have a good history. The early knots. They've been in some dark times, but I think you have to give some love to. I think they made a Champions League semifinal in there. Juninho.
Yeah, over a decade ago. I'm talking most recent 5 years as far
it's
as
it's been disappointing and frustrating for them. And I'm happy with this one. I am a little bit worried. I'm not going to lie that we're betting too much against City. And how far are we going to push this anti-City agenda?
We'll see.
I mean,
we're at least pushing it to the semifinal once we can see who's playing them in the semifinal, because the Lyon bet, no matter what happens, they could beat them 8-0, and it doesn't fundamentally change anything about this City team.
Yeah.
The fundamental issue with City is it's a flawed team, not designed for this tournament, with a manager who has totally failed in these situations over the past few years. So, we're going to. I anticipate honestly placing more bets against them.
Yeah, I saw an interesting stat.
And just to clarify before we forget, so we're going to do a $10 million bet on Lyon here at plus 1,000 to beat City, to outright beat City, and we are also going to bet. We're going to essentially sell City to win the Champions League at plus 225, and we're going to do 50 million.
Yeah, one last thing I want to add to City, and I know this is just City stuff flying left and right, but I saw a stat today. It was like expected goal versus actual goals, and Gab Jesus had expected goals of I think 18.5 or 19, and actual goals of it was either 13 or 14. And as someone who had him in my fucking fantasy team all year, I would not be surprised if he drops a goose egg and misses 2 sitters, and then Depay scores in the 90th minute. Some kind of scenario like that plays out.
Yeah, and one final point. I did have to take issue with one of your points against City, that you didn't see any of their guys as kind of just the close the deal kind of, pull up with a slop goal. I will say that I think Sterling fills that position for them. I don't know to what degree. I mean, when we think of players like that, obviously Benzema is up there, Mandzukic is up there, Ronaldo is probably the best at it. I think Sterling, he's the kind of guy that could pop up with a goal out of nowhere for them, obviously to a much less degree than those other guys, but it doesn't really change anything for them.
Yeah. Obviously, De Bruyne in the first game against Madrid had a performance like that, but I think the whole Lyon sets up on how to dismantle De Bruyne. That's the first thing on the whiteboard.
True.
And then our third bet, and maybe one that we should have actually made initially. a learning point. But Bayern to win the competition 50 mil at 325. We decided to buy these odds. And, maybe this is a mistake on our part of not taking this initially because, we said previously we feel unchanged. Maybe Lewandowski's in better form than we thought he was. But we always like the pedigree of the coach, the depth of the team, the form of the team, the side of the bracket they were on. But maybe we're trying to make up for the money we've lost. Maybe we're coming to our senses. What are your thoughts on this?
The key here is, what are they? They're 325 now. They were 365. That's only 40 on the spread closed. After, quite frankly, a major uncertainty was removed. How are they going to play coming off of a month away from competitive play? The fact is, they played very well against Chelsea and still left room for improvement, which honestly, after getting settled into the Lisbon environment and getting ready for this game, I think we're going to get a 100% Bayern. And that being said, I understand that the bookies are looking at, but Barca performed better in their match as well. And that's probably the main reason these odds didn't come down. Excuse me. The fact is, if Bayern clear Barca, let's call it a 3-1 win, which is my prediction for a scoreline, 3-1. I think these odds come down quite considerably, possibly by 100 points to 220, where Man City is now. That'd be a position where we'd actually clock a 5% profit on this, and I'd be willing to just sell it right there. Take the money and run. This bet is somewhat tactical in that sense. It's also just acknowledging a realization that the bookies were kind of cornered in to not change odds here, because fundamentally nothing really changed. We all knew they were going to go through Chelsea. We all knew that, Barca were going to go through, and ultimately both Barca and Bayern look better than they might have. But I still think Bayern are heavy favorites over Barca here, and will be revealed. This is we're taking a high conviction approach to this bet by placing 50 million on it, versus the actual confidence that I would have in the odds disparity would be more like a 10 million bet. But we feel like this is an aggressive bet that I'd like to make just to test the waters here, since we played it fairly conservative from the first week, and we're still playing it fairly conservative across the board.
Well, yeah, I feel like our strategy the first week was more. We were making more of the Leon to beat Man City-esque bets at 1%, opposed to taking more predictable ones. And maybe this is a good time for us to experiment and see that. I think maybe similarly to our last episode, how we were excited for the City Madrid game. If this Leon City game, if Leon wins, I mean, we immediately make a ton of money, because all of that selling City comes in plus the Leon bet. So that could totally flip the script, and we could go from, first episode is ambitious, second episode's a little bit gloomy, third episode we're like flying high. So we could have a quick turnaround here.
Yeah, and then that Bayern bet for the Champions League. I mean, that's where this plus 325 probably goes down to plus 150, and you clock another 7.5% right there.
Well, because then at that point it's okay. They're playing Lyon, and then they're playing like Red Bull or Atleti or something.
Yeah,
and they become heavy favorites. So
yeah,
this could play out in our favor. I think the worst case scenario would be a big Barcelona win, and PSG have a really good performance against Atalanta.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about the aggregate position, we should mention that we're not going to take any bets on the other side of the tournament tree, because going through these and trying to pick apart where there might be a misprice in the odds, I really couldn't find anything that I didn't think was fair. And I think you felt the same way, right?
Yeah, I still, if you put a gun to my head and said pick one, I still think Atleti is my pick to go through on that side. But I think I want to see one more game, and the style of tournament, the form of the teams. None of those four, probably besides Atalanta, would surprise me to go through all the way. So I think we sit, but maybe if this would be the perfect scenario for me, Diego Costa comes through, two just poachers finishes in the box. They look really solid in defense. Then I look and I say, all right, let's take Atletico to beat PSG or to get to the final. But until I see that, I think I'm out on that side of the bracket for all the reasons we talked about before.
Yeah, I just want to check one thing quickly. What if you've got the odds checker up now? This is one thing that I think we actually glanced over in our pre podcast prep. What is Leipzig to win the Champions League at right now?
Yeah, I'm just getting that up right now. So Leipzig to win the Champions League is at plus 2,000.
We got to put that's. I was plus 1,500 made sense to me there. They beat Atletico. I think they.
Or they're at plus 2,200.
We should place a 10 million bet on that, because that's a bet that has a lot of upside if they upset Atletico.
Oh man, a bet on the fly. Interesting.
Yeah, I just was thinking that the bookies here. My theory behind this too is a little radical. I think we discussed this. Obviously, Leipzig are going to miss Werner, but there's a situation here which I think is not predictable and would not show up anywhere in the historical team sheets or anywhere that the bookies would find it. I think Nagelsmann gets extremely tactical here and tries to play Schick and Paulsen at the same time and just start launching crosses into the box, hoping for a slop goal, defending with 8 men.
So
I think he's going to play Atletico's tactics against them.
This is my only issue with that. If he was playing those, if they were playing PSG, I would totally agree with everything you're saying. However, look at Atletico. It's settled. It's a bunch of tall. If they're going to play a long ball system, they have huge Oblak, commanding defenders, commanding midfielders. They play the same system. You know how Simeone is going to set up. It's effective. Everyone's on the same page. If there's a team that I think is the least susceptible to, a tactical masterclass, it's Atletico. The only times I feel like we see them go out is because they're in poor form going forward, or someone scores a wonder goal against them. I don't see them getting outclassed massively by Red Bull or them having individual players. Well, just tactically, them figuring out the system, because we know how Atleti sets up, and we have a pretty big sample size to say they don't get fooled in these types of games.
They also have yet to play an actually competitive team with a smart manager like Nagelsmann, who's thrown a 4-4-2 with long balls at them. It's literally always been possession of the most aggressive style on the edge of their box, and Atletico defend with 10 men behind. What I'm saying is, you pull Atletico out from their low block and don't give them the chance to counter and play a 4-4-2 against them. I think it's a unique situation.
The thing is, I just don't.
They haven't faced in a serious fashion yet. And also, one thing that probably isn't well understood: Leipzig's midfield is actually a world-class, super underrated midfield. Sabitzer and Konrad Laimer are two of the top, I think, 4 or 5 midfielders in the Bundesliga right now. And I think, honestly, either of them would actually start in just about any other team in the world. I think they would be assets at just about every other team. And I think Nagelsmann might be willing to gamble on that as their primary strength, especially since they're also, being supported by, a decent defensive partnership between Upamecano and either, could be Klosterman. I assume he's going to play right back. Could be Halstenberg. A little bit odd there. I don't know this story on Orban or Konate at the current time, and whether they've been rushed back into this game. I kind of doubt it, but it's going to be interesting. And at plus 2,000, why not place 10 million on it? I think that's a game where there's a lot of room for the bookies to have gotten this wrong simply because the Werner issue.
Well, that kind of goes back on what you were saying before, which was Werner was the central player to the system. I feel like now you're kind of going back and saying, well, the whole team's been, they've gone down.
Yeah, the odds I believe on Leipzig originally were plus 1,200.
Yeah.
And now if they're plus 2,200, that's essentially halving their chances. I thought they were fairly priced at plus 1,200, 1,400, whatever it was. It was a bet if you'd put a gun to my head, I would have been okay having to make it, because I thought that was a fairly priced bet. Plus 2,200, I think it's a little bit odd. I think it's a little bit odd now.
Well, you know what? First time ever on the show, a live bet has been made, and I think you've convinced me. I'm down to go 10% on Leipzig to win overall.
Yeah, we got to make the other side interesting too. I mean, not taking any bets is kind of short-sighted in my opinion. But I just don't see in that Atalanta PSG game. It seems totally fairly placed. I think there's some uncertainty whether Mbappe's coming back. I don't want to place a bet on, is this player going to come back and be in decent form after a semi-serious injury? I'm not interested in trying to play that game. That's,
Well, and we already have money going against them.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, we'll update our spreadsheet to include those now 4 bets. Kind of give you an idea of what we've lost, what we stand to gain. And we're going to try to get this posted either tonight or tomorrow right before the games start. Interesting time.
What game is on tomorrow?
I thought that the first Champions League game was on tomorrow. Am I wrong about that?
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's Atalanta PSG.
Oh, brilliant! Good.
So
good.
that'll be a good way to ease in because we don't really have anything riding on it.
By the way, to all these people who keep saying this tournament sucks, excuse me, when are we ever going to get to have 4 matches in consecutive days ever again like this? Because what is it? It's Atalanta Paris tomorrow. Next day, Leipzig Atletico. Friday, Barca Bayern, and then Saturday, City Lyon. I mean, give me a break. This is fantastic. Every single day there's something to look forward to. I don't understand how anybody's not excited for this. I get it. The level of play isn't where it's been historically. But guess what? Last year's Champions League tournament sucked. And this has the opportunity to be great.
Yeah, and last thing I want to add to that is I usually fall into the trap of only really watching the Premier League games, especially if those teams are close. Like I'll watch, I would watch City Lyon over a much better game, like maybe Red Bull Atletico would be. But because it's so spaced out, for someone like me that has these biases, I'm excited that I can kind of shed that a little bit and really get to appreciate those games in full and not be checking my phone to see what the other ones are. It kind of reminds me of like when the World Cup gets down to the 1 game a day.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and that's when it gets super entertaining. So, people need to look for the positive things in life, especially when there's so much negative in the world right now. I think this is a good time to be appreciative that we have a world-class sporting event when there's nothing else on television. We have 4 straight days of it. It's really a blessing, and I couldn't be more grateful for it.
Well, let's hope we have the same tone the next time we chat, Rolf.
Yeah. It's all we just bet the farm on all of this stuff.
All right.
It'll be fun to check back. Great talking to you, Noah.